Hey, this is Greg LaRose with the Louisiana Illuminator with one of our Q&As on what's a hot topic right now in the legislature, Representative Julie Emerson's bill. It's called the LA GATOR program, and it would, in short, allow state money to follow students, whether they want to go to a private school or move over to another public school. And here today to talk with us about this is Hera Varmah. She's a school choice expert with the American Federation for Children. Hera, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I think a good place to start would be setting people up with a definition of school choice. We're hearing the term thrown around. We know we've dealt with school vouchers, which seem like a choice in there. But so if you could just sort of start us off with an explanation of what exactly are we talking about with school choice here?
So yes, thank you for the question. But this is a question I feel like a lot of people really don't know. I didn't know that what school choice was until I graduated college. And so I knew I benefited from a scholarship. And so I love when I get asked this question, but school choice is anywhere from utilizing an education savings account to a tax credit, scholarship, to a voucher. And then you can also have a public charter school. You can utilize a magnet program. So there are different options that fall under the umbrella of a school choice program. But yeah, it can go anywhere between a public charter school to a tax credit, utilizing that, which is what I utilize here in Florida.
So with what Representative Emerson is proposing through the GATOR program, which, like, can you find a more Louisiana acronym than GATOR? It's as though she wants to take the money to that's devoted, like the per pupil money that's allocated to each public school, and essentially let parents choose where they'd want to spend that money, whether it be in a private school or just simply switching to another public school where maybe they offer a better option for that child.
Yes, so this is an education savings account, which is the LB 745. Sorry, I have 753 in my mind for another bill, but 745. And this is an education savings account. And so basically it's different than a tax credit. A tax credit, you can only utilize that for a scholarship for a school. So the tuition only, tuition and fees. And sometimes it depends on what is written in the bill. You can use it for uniforms, but an education savings account is not only utilized for the tuition and fees, you can use it for transportation, depending on the bill. You can utilize it for school uniforms, for tutoring, for laptop supplies for school. And so it's a more flexible scholarship program. And so I was there last week testifying on behalf of LB 745 in the House. And that was a big part of the conversation and the debate on whether or not the bill hasn't passed yet. So I can't say whether or not exactly what it will do or what the implementation laws will be around it. But this is exactly what an education savings account is. It gives a lot more flexibility to families to use it for transportation, tuition and fees, uniforms, whatever will help the child best. And what I can say with all of these scholarships, it's really used to find the best school for each individual child. Instead of sticking them in the same school and saying that they're all going to learn the same, it's giving them that option on what school that they send their child to.
What's the difference between an education savings account and a school voucher, a program which is ongoing, and it feels like the GATOR education savings account program would basically replace it?
So I wouldn't necessarily say replace it, because it would still be, again, the bill hasn't passed. So there's a lot more
True.
conversation to be had. So I can't speak on exactly what this will look like at the end. But it will, in a lot of states, what these education savings accounts do is expand programs that are already existing. So what happens is a lot of these, if it's a voucher or tax credit, here in Florida, we had a tax credit, we have a lot of different types of scholarships. But when we passed the Universal ESA last year, all of that went under the umbrella. And so what they do is the facilitating organization then has different forms of the scholarship that they can apply to, whether that's for a special needs child, or that's for you're applying for extra tutoring, whatever that may be. So education savings account, again, makes it more flexible. And that's the difference that I would say between a voucher program and an ESA. Vouchers is, again, typically going right to the parent decides on the school, the facilitating program sends that amount to the school, parent signs off on it. That's how that works. And for tuition and fees. And so when you're looking at your education savings account, it's a very flexible, it really does relieve some of that stress off of parents in deciding, okay, this will only go to tuition and fees, but I have all these other things that this child needs in their educational experience.
I think part of the issue here with Louisiana with vouchers has also been there's been some discrepancies over whether or not that money could be used with a religious-based school, and the proponents of the ESAs are saying that would no longer be a problem with those. So Louisiana, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we would be like the 14th state to adopt ESAs. Through your experience, and I'm sure you've worked, with promoting this in other states, what's the track record of success? Where have we seen this work and really turn around not just individual schools or school districts, but where have we seen significant statewide change from a poor performing state to one that has seen, as a result of the ESAs, things really turn around?
Yeah, so like you said, we have just, ESAs had just become the new kind of push. And so we recently just passed a lot of these universal ESAs or education savings accounts in general. In a lot of these states, you had Iowa that passed a big universal ESA last year. You had Florida, you had Utah. So you had many states that have passed it. And so you can see the data in terms of the different scholarship programs. We do have some research that goes to show how it's done in different states. You've seen like a story of Florida, where Florida, we went from 34th and 35th and 36th in the nation's report card to now the 3rd and 4th and 5th in reading and math scores. And that's on a national, that's public school level. And so again, not only are we talking about, is it helping each individual school, it's it's creating that competition, that natural competition between all schools to make sure that they are held accountable and that they are, pushing their students. But when you go to, when you go on the basis of actual specifically education savings accounts, I can give you some of that research. Again, this is newer because you've had many states that just recently passed. So you would be getting data from, like, I guess, this past school year for a lot of these states that have had, especially universal education savings accounts. But I think Florida is a big story to look at. You have Florida, you have Iowa. You have a few other states that are starting to pass. And I think that you can see the difference between what education environment was like before passing a lot of these programs and then afterwards. But I think with that ESAs particularly, you have to give it, I guess we have some research, but I know you'd want extensive.
Still too early to say there's
Yes.
direct correlation. Has it been long enough to measure the buy-in? Because one of the things that the questions here in Louisiana about the ESAs is, are we going to see this mass exodus from public to private schools when all of a sudden this money is available? And obviously the concern would be, we are essentially moving money out of schools, which we'll get to in a bit. But again, has there been a measurement of watching any significant migration of public school students to private?
Okay. Well, I want to go back to your last question. We have a lot of research on education savings accounts in general, but if you're talking about universal, which I know that this bill is is becoming a stackable bill that will become universal. The universal section is where the data is, again, very new because these states have just started to pass universal. Education savings accounts, you can see the data has proven that there are many success stories and showing how students, their achievement scores have gone up after they have utilized a school choice program in general. It can be a tax credit, voucher, or ESA. And I can send that after this meeting. I just did some for Georgia and South Carolina. So I can send that over. And then your second question, I'm sorry.
Just has it been long enough to measure the buy-in from states where it has been universal? Become
So, yeah. So we haven't seen a mass exodus from the schools, from public schools. I haven't heard, I mean, I know the big narrative is that, taking money away from public schools, or, all the students are going to leave. Well, if you think all parents are going to leave, that's one. I like to say, if you think a lot of parents will pull their child from that particular public school, then what's wrong with the public school? I know for a lot of parents, it's a nice distance to their home. A lot of these public schools, they have their friends that go to these public schools. So parents take a lot of into consideration when they're taking their kid out of their traditional public school and sending them to another school. And we've seen this again. Florida has over 400,000 students that are currently on our program right now, but we haven't seen one public school that is shut down. We've seen public schools get better. We've seen some public schools adopt magnet programs. So that can be performing art programs, that can be engineering programs to attract families to send their child to the school. And I think that that's what's all about, making sure that you are competing for parents' attention to send their child to the school. It shouldn't just be that you're giving them the status quo and their child's failing, but you get to, we still have to send children to this school. But no, I haven't seen that. Even in the state of Florida, I still have not seen a mass exodus from one particular school. You also see a lot of fluctuation. You see kids that have gone from private to micro schools, or from private to public schools, or public to private, or charter, or magnet. You've seen it all. I mean, parents don't just say, I like, again, it's not just one particular type of school choice, which is why education savings accounts have become so popular, because it creates that environment for a lot of these different type of schools to thrive. And so that's what I've seen, but I haven't seen a mass exodus from schools.
One group of parents that's, I think, a bit worried about whatever transition lies ahead are those with children who have special needs. And it's sort of a two-sided situation where they fear as though if they're unable for whatever reason to take advantage of an education savings account and go to a school with those services, that they're left behind at a place where, what resources were there for special needs will become even smaller. They also point out that private schools aren't necessarily required to provide special needs. How do what's the argument to those parents to say, okay, this is the route ESAs are where we need to go to address your concerns?
Yeah. So one, for the special needs argument, and parents that do have children with special needs, there are a lot of programs that have opened up because of school choice programs, not because they haven't. It has gone the other way. A lot of special need programs have expanded and gotten a lot more money than they have in the past. In Florida, the universal ESA that was passed last year, the first priority goes to special needs students and disadvantaged students, lower income, students that get bullied. All of those fit under the criteria for getting the first dib on the scholarship. But I've never, again, the same way that the argument that it will take funds away from the public school, I have not seen one public school lose their funding. I haven't seen one public school with its special needs program lose their funding. Now, where they decide to delegate their funds is up to the public school, but not one public school has lost funding. And there's evidence to show that it has not been the case. And so what I will say is that what school choice does, it does offer the opportunity to expand a lot of these programs and for schools to start to adapt these programs to help special needs. We have different micro schools that help special needs. There's a surfing school. There's something to do with the water in Miami, Miami-Dade County, that something with the buoyancy helps them to learn better. There's another school that teaches cursive because apparently, and this is not my specialty, but these are stories that have come out where writing in cursive does help kids that have dyslexia be able to read the sentence. And so there's amazing things that have been going on with a lot of these school choice programs. So to not fight for school choice programs is just lessening the opportunities that can come to the state. Your other question about, private schools not having to offer these programs, parents can decide what school they pick. So if a school does not offer that program, then a parent can go to another school. So this really, again, puts all the power into the parents' hands. It's not saying you have to, I went to Tampa Catholic High School, and my brothers went to Jesuit High School, and I had sisters that went to Academy of the Holy Names, and they were all within a few miles from each other. They were all Catholic schools, but they all offer different opportunities for each one of us to learn, because we learn differently. And so I would say to parents that are looking for other opportunities, you should be fighting for these programs, because what it does is offer you a vast list of schools that you can pick from.
We're talking to Hera Varmah. She's a school choice expert with the American Federation for Children. And we've touched on this a bit, Hera, about the big concern of public money leaving public schools and depleting them. Um, what's your argument to those parents, or anyone that fears as though that this would sort of leave but basically create a system of have and have nots? And you mentioned just so far, although it's early, no schools have closed, but knowing that in the march towards universal education savings accounts, clearly, we'd have to be concerned if you are a poor performing school with limited services in an area where, let's say, in a rural part of Louisiana, there aren't a lot of options for our kids to go. What's your argument to those families?
Well, I'll answer the first question about, funds going away from the public school. It's not too early to say what school choice has done. There have been many school choice scholarships that have been passed from the 80s and to the present. In Florida, we passed in the early 2000s under Governor Jeb Bush our first tax credit scholarship. And again, not one public school has closed. So we have 20 plus years of evidence that not one public school is closed when you've offered school choice opportunities, school choice scholarships in each state. Public schools have done better because it's created natural competition. You even have, superintendents like the one in Miami-Dade County that said, if we don't ride this wave of school choice and offer different opportunities and make sure our schools are competing, then parents will decide not to send their students to the school. And I think we can all agree, if a school is failing the child, that we shouldn't have to keep sending our child to the school. We have so much evidence of so many children just slipping through the system, failing. I mean, you have the Baltimore situation where only 14, not 14%, 14 students passed the math test, 14. And these were African-American students in the 8th grade. And that's sad. That's really sad that's what's going on. And if you're telling me that we're just going to keep throwing money to that situation and not offer an out to those parents, then that's what's more disturbing. But in Louisiana, again, we have different states that have rural areas. I mean, look at Iowa, look at not Minnesota, Wisconsin. You have a lot of evidence that goes around these different, I guess, rural areas or highly populated areas. And so these are arguments that really don't have any evidence behind it, but it's just said to kind of, bring up this conversation. But what I will say is that school choices is something that creates ability for parents to decide what school they send their child to. I benefited from it. I was 9 out of 12 of my siblings. We all utilized the tax credit, and the 3 that didn't utilize the 3 public schools that they weren't zoned for. And now we have success stories because of that. And so I say, if we want to make any change in the state of Louisiana, we have got to offer children different opportunities and not stand in their way because of our fears. School choice is not something that hasn't been tested out. It's not an idea that, we're just now thinking of. We've had, again, 20 plus years of evidence to go to show that it actually does impact education system in a positive way. So I don't see why we can't get on board.
You brought up the tiered approach to this, and we've been throwing around the term universal just for a quick moment to let folks watching this know. As it stands now in the bill that Representative Emerson is moving forward, and the governor has voiced his vocal support for, it would immediately be available to those children already using school vouchers. And kindergartners would have a first spot in line. And there's a ceiling for participation at the onset for families that I want to say the percentage figure is 120% of the line. Am I off on that number, or do you know it offhand?
I don't know it offhand, but I can get that number to you.
And I've got it on another tab here, but I risk closing our conversation if I were to
No.
get it. But for a family of four, the dollar amount, or the ceiling, let's call it, is $120,000. That's where I was getting the 124. Now that would gradually, I guess you could say, stair step up to the point in school year 28-29, it becomes universal. There are no income barriers to it. And that takes us down a whole road. We won't go there with the state's fiscal situation. What I did want to ask you is that in states that have put this in place, and again, it's only recently that we've seen the universal steps taken. Is it just a standalone? What else are you seeing that's contributing to the success of the ESAs and the idea of school choice?
I mean, school choice, again, it's kind of like your education. I mean, when I started school, I like to say like my middle school was the foundation to all of my family, all of my siblings' education. 9 of us went through that one middle school. And now, again, we have 4 college graduates, 6 university, and 2 on their way to university in a few years. And I like to say that that is our foundation. And what I will say is school choice for me is like a foundation. It creates, again, so much flexibility. It creates the competition. It gives parents the option. It puts the dollars in the parents' hands, which and in the students' hands, and that's where it belongs, because it's to educate children. And so school choice, whether you say it's a voucher, whether you say it's a tax credit or an ESA, it just gives it's what the American dream is about. It gives us choice. It gives us options. And in every other industry, whether you're using public dollars, like let's say food stamps, you can take that to Publix or you can take it to Walmart. And if you don't like Target for some reason, you can go to Sprouts or Aldi's. And you have this option. I mean, we have school choice when it comes to pre-K. We have school choice when it comes to college. We have the Pell Grants. And we say, oh, this is public funding and you can take it to any university you want to. We say with the GI Bill, we say you can take this money, you can take it to any preschool you want to. But when it comes to your those middle years, the years that really matter and determine what your future will look like, we say, well, no, you have to go to public school. And what I always say is there are many great public schools. I started off in elementary school that was a pretty decent public school, but my mom didn't like the middle and high school. And so what it did was it allowed my mom to be able to say, well, I don't want them to go here. There are fights, or this school is, it's a D+ school or an F school for another school that we were going to go to. And she said, I want better for my children. I know that they can be successful as long as they have the right education. And so she sent us to the right schools. And from there on, it was up to us to then utilize those skills. But we were able to break the cycle of poverty in one generation. And I think that that's what the American dream is all about. That's what we promised American citizens and said, you'll have these choices, you'll have the opportunity. But sticking them in a public school, only public school, and saying you have to stay in this zoned public school, and if it's failing you, you have to stay. We'll keep throwing money at it and we'll keep working on it, but you have to stay. That's not what we promised the American people. And so what the school choice, what these scholarship programs do is it does just that. It values values that promise that we made to our citizens and making sure that we educate each one of our children. And so at least give them the opportunity. And so what I will say, it is a standalone, but there are many, it's the environment that school choice creates, I would say.
Yeah, thank you for that very, very thorough answer. You wonder if states sort of look at this as the cure-all, but it sounds like there's, kind of like you're also addressing the larger ecosystem in response to where you choose to spend your money as a family and obviously policymakers. And that kind of brings us to the next part here. We'll wrap up here soon. on the politics of this. Clearly, school choice has been painted as a conservative issue. Here in Louisiana, we have an overwhelmingly elected Republican governor, a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature. What do you say to folks that this is more of a political movement than, say, one aimed at education reform?
I would say that they're making it a political movement. They're making a political argument. I joined AFC. I joined the school choice movement because I knew that that was the right thing to do and that I was giving back and that I wasn't going to utilize a program and then turn a blind eye to the system and say, well, it worked for me. What school choice worked for me, but I'm not going to fight for other students. And this should really be a nonpartisan issue. We should not say that, I wish that we could work with everybody across the aisle, but we have teaching unions that control a lot of these Democrat seats. And they again, a lot of the Democrats just quote the party line and they go against school choice programs because of that. And a lot of them are fearful of their reelection if they do say yes to one of these bills. And that's what we've seen across states. We've seen that pretty much everywhere. Well, we do have a really great story of in Georgia last year, Misha Maynor, who was a Democrat. She was the only Democrat that voted yes on their tax credit scholarship that they were trying to pass through the legislature there. And even she said, there's a lot of things that I disagree with, with the Republicans. We may have our debates on other issues, but this one should not be a political issue. This is about flesh and blood. This is about children. And I think if you're looking at your own children and you have sent your own children to private school, or you've homeschooled your children, or you yourself have gone to private school, or have had just a great education experience, I think we can look at the next generation and say, well, I want to make sure that you guys have the same thing. I'm not going to utilize my private school or my homeschool experience and then say, well, it was great for me, but it's not for the rest of you. So it really should not be a political argument. And I would say to the people that think it is, that we should keep fighting to not make it. This should be across all party lines, that school choice is the right way to go, because it's about our children and we should not be having this petty argument on either side. So that's what I would say to that.
And you've given me the perfect transition to do something we do whenever we bring in essentially a third outside party to these conversations. We're the illuminator. We shed light on things, believe in transparency. So just a little bit about the American Federation for Children, people. I did a bit of research on the state campaign finance disclosure records. The AFC, based in Dallas, right?
Dallas, Texas,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. They have a PAC that essentially has a secondary PAC that is Louisiana centered, and based on our state campaign finance records, the Louisiana PACs donated pretty even-handedly to Democrats and Republicans. I could find no donation to candidates or PACs from that Louisiana group since 2019. So I know that's something our readers expect us to provide for them, to let folks know a little bit about the background of the organizations that we pull into and share time with here. So Hera, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time you spent. I've seen you at the Capitol remotely, so perhaps I'll have a chance to run into you in person eventually. So thanks again for your time, and I appreciate you helping inform our readers and viewers.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Greg.